New Testament was originally written in Greek, and at last count we had over 5,700 copies of the New Testament in the Greek language in which it was originally written. And we have copies in other languages because as Christianity spread throughout the Roman Empire, people translated the New Testament into other languages, such as Latin. We have something like 10,000 copies of the Bible in the New Testament in Latin, in Coptic, the ancient Egyptian language, in Syriac, in Georgian, in Armenian, in Old Church Slavonic, etc., etc. We have all sorts of copies in all sorts of languages. So with all of these differences, with all of these manuscripts, how many differences are there? Nobody knows how many differences there are among the manuscripts. Sometimes scholars guess there may be a couple 100,000 differences. Some people say 300,000, some say 400,000. There are different guesses. The way I usually put it to my students is in comparative terms. There are more differences in our manuscripts than there are words in the New Testament. More differences in our manuscripts than there are words in the New Testament. Now, having said that we have these hundreds of thousands of differences, I want to emphasize a particular point, which is most of these differences that we have in our manuscripts are completely insignificant, unimportant, and don't matter for a thing. Many of these differences in the manuscripts are so unimportant that you can't replicate them in translation. Okay? In other words, like they changed the word order in Greek, where you would have to translate it the same way no matter what the Greek word order is. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter very much. By far, the vast majority of these hundreds of thousands of differences are significant for nothing more than showing that scribes in antiquity could spell no better than my students can today. Scribes, in fact, didn't even have dictionaries. And many scribes didn't care how they spelled anything. Sometimes you'll be reading a manuscript and there'll be the same word that occurs, say, 3 times within a couple of lines, and the scribe will spell the same word 3 different ways. He just doesn't care how the word is spelled. Well, so, you know, you've got lots and lots of those kinds of changes, and what do they matter for? They don't matter at all. So, having said there are all these hundreds of thousands of differences, I want to stress that most of them don't matter for very much. Some of these changes, the ones that don't matter, basically are accidental mistakes. Scribes were sometimes tired or sleepy, sometimes they were distracted, sometimes they were inept or unqualified, and they made mistakes. Most of these differences that we have in our manuscripts are completely insignificant, unimportant, and don't matter for a thing. Most of these differences that we have in our manuscripts are completely insignificant, unimportant, and don't matter for a thing. Most of these differences that we have in our manuscripts are completely insignificant, unimportant, and don't matter for a thing.